How do we analyze a quota? Notice that with a tariff, the level of imports will be Q2, Q3. What happens if instead of putting a tax on imports, we chose to restrict imports to the quantity Q2, Q3? Suppose it is illegal to import more than Q2 to Q3. If the world market price is PW, then the domestic supply curve that we have obtains up to PW, and then we have a horizontal segment equivalent to the length of the quota, and thereafter, above PW, the domestic supplier will pick up supplying, and he will follow the supply curve at the same slope as the original supply curve. So there will be effectively a shift, a horizontal shift of the supply curve, equivalent to the length Q2, Q3. It will be convenient to use that length at P prime, since we know exactly where the intersection will be. So let the new supply curve, the aggregate supply curve with the quota, pass through P prime Q3, and use the horizontal segment at PW from the original supply curve to the new supply curve. The equilibrium will then obtain where the demand and supply are equal, and we see that we get exactly the same outcome in terms of price and quantity as with a tariff equivalent to T that would raise the price to P prime. Let's say that again. A tariff equivalent to T will give us the same consequence as a quota equivalent to Q2, Q3. The quota restriction pushes the price up to P prime in exactly the same way that the tariff would. Let us look at welfare changes. We know that the producer surplus value will increase by area A. We know consumers will lose A, B, C, D because of the new price P prime. The vexing question is, what happens to area C? Well, government could sell the right to purchase imports, and this would be a licensing system which involves selling the quota rights. Whomever happens to be the importer will then be able to buy the Q2, Q3, and we expect that the market forces will bid the price for that quota right up to the level of T. So by selling the rights to import, the government can collect as much money as it did with a tariff without calling it a tariff. A nice way to get around using the word tariff. And after the GATT, the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade, said that we should reduce tariffs, and creative governments started looking for non-tariff barriers, such as quotas, and a quota could basically get the same result as a tariff. We talked about the government auctioning off the quota rights because they do have a value, but the government can always choose to just give this quota right to anybody without auctioning off the right. Whomever gets the right to import then will get a windfall because they will get something that's valuable for the price of zero. Area C would then go to the domestic importer, and it remains a part of the domestic social welfare. The more interesting question is when the government decides to give the quota rights to the foreign country, the exporting country. Effectively, we have a loss equivalent to B, C, D. Let's go back to the banana case and see where the European governments attempted to give these import licenses to supplier governments in the ACP and non-ACP regions. Clearly, when this gift to a government happens, we can see that not only is the domestic country worse off, but now the firms in the receiving country, the country that's exporting the product to you, have to figure out how to interact with their government in order to get access to these rights.